I should start by saying this. If someone had warned me that the night shift at the Ridgefield Walmart had rules written for things that aren't supposed to exist, I would have found another job. I would have kept driving past the now hiring overnight stalkers needed sign, kept going until the highway disappeared and the whole town shrank into a memory like it had for most people my age. But the truth is, no one warned me, not even the people who should have. They let me walk straight into that building, under the buzzing fluorescent lights, with nothing more than a vest, a scanner, and a set of laminated instructions that only made sense once it was too late. If you're hearing this, understand one thing. This isn't a ghost story. People love that word because it keeps the real terror at a safe distance. No. What I experienced on those nights wasn't dead people trying to speak to the living. It was something older, stranger, and far more organized. And it wanted me. From the moment I stepped inside on my first shift, something in that Walmart recognized me the way a locked door recognizes the right key. I didn't know any of that on the night it began. I just thought I'd found a job, temporary, necessary, nothing more. But the moment the doors slid shut behind me, trapping the cold October night outside, the overhead lights flickered in perfect sequence down the main aisle. One by one by one, a path, straight toward the stock corridor in the back. A path I wasn't supposed to follow. A path that pulsed like it was greeting me, or warning me. When the last light blinked, every register in the front of the store beeped once at the exact same time. All 12, perfectly synchronized, like a breath. That was the moment I should have walked out. Instead, I just stood there with my new name tag pinned to my chest, staring at the empty registers and silent aisles, telling myself the same lie everyone tells to survive the first step into danger. It's just my imagination. It wasn't. And if you stick with me, I'll show you what those lights were leading me toward, what the rules were designed to contain, and why I still don't know whether I survived that place, or just became part of it. Before I go further, if you want more true night shift horror stories like this, real experiences from real people who've worked in the strangest corners of America, subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know, and it keeps me going when these stories get hard to tell. Now, let's go back to the beginning. My name is Evan Carter, 29 years old. I moved back to Ridgefield, Ohio, after losing a job I thought I'd be at for years. The warehouse I worked at in Cleveland brought in automated sorting machines, sleek, quiet things that did in 10 minutes what I used to do in an hour. Management said we'd be retrained. Most of us thought that meant hope. What it actually meant was, don't worry, you'll be replaced later, not now. Later came faster than expected, so there I was, moving back to a town I swore I'd never return to. Ridgefield sits on a stretch of highway surrounded by farmland and collapsing barns, the kind of place where every generation leaves a little earlier than the last. The population sign says 5,182, but that hasn't been true for 20 years. Half the houses along Maple Ridge Road still have foreclosure stickers, sun-bleached onto the windows. I found a room above an old diner that shut down before I made it to high school. The upstairs apartment still smelled faintly of fryer oil and dust, and the heater rattled like it was coughing itself awake every night at 3 a.m. But the rent was cheap, and cheap was what I needed. I applied everywhere. The gas station near the highway, the hardware store that closed at 5 p.m. sharp every day, and the local school district, which told me, politely, that substitute teaching now required certifications I didn't have. Walmart was the last place I applied. The only place that called back. They didn't even wait a day. 2 hours after I submitted the application, I got a voicemail from the store manager. Come in tonight at 7 for an interview. Bring a photo ID. We're short-staffed. Short-staffed was an understatement. That evening, the store looked like a skeleton of itself. Almost no customers. A few employees stacking end caps with the urgent energy of people who've been asked to do more than they're paid for. The air smelled faintly like rubber from the automotive aisle, and something else, something metallic, old, like the scent you get when water runs through pipes that haven't been touched in decades. The interview took place in the break room, but calling it a room was generous. It was a box. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the vending machine buzzed like it had been dying slowly for years. That's where I met her, Linda Harrow. Linda was the kind of person you'd expect to run a hospital ward, not a Walmart. Controlled, composed, focused. She wore gray slacks, a navy vest, and a posture so precise it almost felt unnatural. Her eyes were a pale, watery blue, and when they landed on me, I felt like she was checking a list I couldn't see. "You worked warehouse inventory," she said without asking. She already knew. "Good. We need order here. We need reliability." She didn't smile when she said it. She didn't need to. She slid a laminated card across the table. "These are the overnight rules. Review them before your first shift. 7 rules. Short, sharp, specific in the way instruction manuals for dangerous machinery are specific. Don't stock aisles 5, 8, or 12 between 12 a.m. and 2 a.m. Do not use the customer restrooms. Do not respond to customers who ask for directions after 1 a.m. Do not enter the primary stock corridor between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. If you hear footsteps behind you after 3 a.m., do not turn around. Always keep your name badge visible. Never follow anyone into an aisle you didn't watch them walk into. I remember rereading the last rule 3 times. Never follow anyone into an aisle you didn't watch them walk into. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means what it says," Linda replied. "Just follow the protocols. They've been here longer than any of us." I thought she meant the rules had been around for years. I would later understand she meant something else entirely. Something in the store had been here longer than any of them. When she offered me the job, I accepted without hesitation. I needed the paycheck. I needed to prove to myself I could rebuild. I needed to feel like I had purpose again. But Linda's last words to me stuck in my mind in a way I didn't like, the way she said them, the way she watched me as she did. "You seem like someone the Knights will take too," she said, "not you'll take to the Knights. The Knights will take to you." Looking back, that was the real warning, and I ignored it completely. I wish I hadn't. I started my first shift the following Monday. It was the kind of cold that gets into the bones, the kind that feels older than winter itself. Ridgefield always had a different kind of cold, quiet, patient, waiting. The parking lot was almost empty when I pulled in at 9:45 p.m., the sky a deep, silent navy with no stars. The Walmart sign buzzed faintly overhead, casting a blue glow across the cracked pavement like a warning light. The night greeter checked me in without looking up from his phone. The store was open 24 hours, but after 10 p.m., it felt like a different world. The sliding doors opened slower than they should have, as if pushing against a weight I couldn't see. When I stepped inside, that strange metallic smell hit me again, like wet stone, like an old basement, like something buried deep below. Ray Schmidt, the assistant manager, met me near the front registers. Late 30s, beard trimmed short, eyes tired but kind. He didn't have Linda's ice-cold calm. Ray looked like someone who carried stress in every muscle of his back. "You're Evan, right?" he asked. I nodded. "First night." He gave a small, sympathetic smile. "Everyone's first night is weird. Just follow the rules. All of them, even the ones that feel silly." He said it the same way someone would warn you not to touch a live wire. Not aggressively, just urgently enough to make it clear he meant it. Ray handed me a scanner, a small cart, and a set of keys for the supply cabinets. He walked me through the layout, pointing out the break room, employee restroom, emergency exits, the side storage area, and the main stock corridor, the one that was supposedly off-limits from 3 to 5 a.m. "We keep to the side storage at night," he said. "Main corridor gets busy." "Busy how?" I asked. He hesitated. Then he pretended he hadn't heard the question. As we walked, the overhead lights flickered in the same perfect pattern I'd seen during the interview, moving down the main aisle like a falling row of dominoes. I stopped walking without meaning to, watching each light stutter twice before catching and holding steady. Ray noticed I'd stopped and didn't turn to face me. He stared straight ahead and said, "Just ignore it. It's normal." Normal. Lights that behaved like a signal pattern. A store breathing. That was normal here. We walked past aisles filled with stillness, so heavy it felt like a pressure change. Something about the tile floors, the stacks of perfectly aligned products, and the hum of the refrigeration units created a soundscape too controlled, too synchronized, like the building was listening. I didn't even realize I was slowing down again until Ray's voice cut through the silence. "Don't fall behind," he said quickly. "This place, it reacts to gaps." That sentence should have terrified me. It did, but not enough. I brushed off the unease and caught up. We reached aisle 3, and Ray demonstrated how to scan, stock, face products, and update the system. Straightforward enough. I'd done inventory work for years. My body understood the rhythm before my mind did, but every few minutes, I caught Ray checking the far ends of aisles. Not casually, strategically, like someone keeping watch. I wasn't sure who he was watching for, or what. At 10:58 p.m., Linda appeared without making a sound. She had a talent for that, arriving like she was materializing rather than walking. Her eyes swept the aisle, then me. "You're settling in," she said. It wasn't a question. "Trying," I answered. She nodded once, then handed me a laminated revision sheet. Additional notes, additional rules. Rule 8 wasn't on the original list. It said, "If you see someone wearing an older style blue vest, do not approach. If they speak to you, walk away immediately, but calmly." I stared at the line. The wording felt surgical. "Is this really necessary?" I asked. Linda tilted her head, studying me with those cold, wet blue eyes. "Every rule is written because it needed to be." Then she left, just as silently as she'd arrived. Ray sighed. "She could have eased you into that one." "What does it mean?" I asked. He lifted a box of pasta onto the shelf and pretended to think about how to explain it. But instead of answering, he changed the subject. "Stay ahead of your aisles," he said. "Plan your route." I didn't press him. Some part of me didn't want to know yet. By midnight, Ray was on break, leaving me alone to handle aisles 1 through 3. That was fine. I've always been comfortable with solitude, but this was different. Every time I turned my back, I felt something shift behind me. Not movement exactly, more like the air changing shape. The first real moment of wrongness happened at 12:17 a.m. I had just finished restocking boxes of baking soda when I heard a soft, rolling rattle behind me, like a single wheel moving across tile. I turned. A shopping cart sat at the far end of the aisle. I hadn't seen anyone push it there. It wasn't moving, but I knew, deep in the oldest part of my instincts, that it wasn't in that spot 10 seconds earlier. I took one step toward it. The cart's handle twitched. Then it rolled 2 inches toward me. I froze. The overhead lights hummed louder, vibrating faintly in my teeth. "Ray?" I called out. No answer. The cart rolled again, slightly angled, as if nudging me toward the intersection of aisles. Toward aisle 5, a restricted aisle. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes fixed on the metal frame. When I reached the end of aisle 3, the cart stopped completely. It didn't follow, didn't turn, didn't rattle. It just waited. I told myself it was on uneven flooring. Maybe a breeze. But my gut knew better. The store wasn't reacting to air, it was reacting to me, to my presence, to my movement. My scanner buzzed, reminding me to continue my route. I forced myself to refocus. The rhythm of work grounded me. Scan, place, straighten, scan, place, straighten. The predictable steps gave me something to hold on to. Then something strange happened. At 12:39 a.m., while stocking canned goods, I found a handwritten sticky note tucked between 2 cans of soup. Yellow paper, slanted handwriting, edges worn like it had been handled many times. It said only, "You're doing fine. Keep your badge visible. No signature." My heart dropped into my stomach. I looked around. No one was there. Ray still on break. Linda somewhere in the back offices. No customers. No employees. Someone had written that note knowing I would be in this aisle at this moment. Someone who wanted me to follow the rules. Someone who didn't want to show themselves. I slipped the note into my pocket and pretended nothing was wrong. But the strangest moment of the night hadn't happened yet. It happened when I moved to aisle 2 and saw someone, standing halfway down, facing the shelves like they were browsing. A woman, medium height, wearing a blue Walmart vest, but not the current vest design, an older version, the style they discontinued years ago. Her hair hung over her face, blocking her eyes. She didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't acknowledge me. I remembered Rule 8 on the new sheet. If you see someone wearing an older style blue vest, do not approach. She turned her head slowly, like she'd heard the thought rather than the sound. Her hair parted just enough for me to see the empty space where her eyes should have been. I stepped back. She took one step in my direction. I didn't think. I ran. The overhead lights flickered in a stuttering, panicked rhythm as I sprinted down the main aisle. Products rattled on shelves. Something heavy crashed in the distance. My scanner beeped repeatedly in error mode. But behind me I didn't hear footsteps. Just breathing. Close, way too close. I didn't turn around. Rule 5. If you hear footsteps behind you after 3 a.m., do not turn around. But this wasn't footsteps. This was something worse. I ran until I saw Ray emerging from the break room, holding a bottle of water and looking half asleep. His eyes snapped open when he saw my face. "What happened?" I tried to speak, but my voice shook too hard to form words. Ray exhaled sharply. "You saw her." I nodded. He didn't ask for details. He didn't need to. "She usually doesn't show up this early," he murmured. "Not unless she's curious." "Curious about what?" I asked. Ray hesitated, then said, "You." And then the lights above us flickered again, this time in a long, unbroken ripple that rolled down the entire store like a silent wave. A warning, or a greeting. I didn't know which one scared me more. The moment the lights rippled overhead, Ray grabbed my arm. Not hard, just firmly enough to keep me from bolting again. His face had gone pale, and not in the way someone looks when they're scared. It was the look of someone remembering a past mistake and recognizing it happening all over again. "We need to move," he said. "Don't stand still when the lights do that." "Why?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just guided me, not quite pulling, not quite pushing, down the main aisle toward hardware. He glanced back twice, his eyes narrowing like he was tracking something I couldn't see. When we reached the far end of the store, he stopped, let go of my arm, and finally said, "There's a pattern. If you stand still during the ripple, the store thinks you're part of the loop." "The loop?" He shook his head. "Not yet. You'll understand later." There was a moment where neither of us spoke. The store hummed around us. The refrigerators, the overhead lights, the faint buzz of old wiring. But beneath that, I thought I heard something else. A low, shifting murmur, like dozens of voices whispering through walls of concrete. "What happened back there?" I asked him. He didn't pretend not to know what I meant. "You saw one of the echoes." "Echoes?" I repeated. "That's what I call them," he said quietly. "Linda prefers the term residual shoppers, but that makes it sound cleaner than it is." I waited. Ray leaned against a shelf filled with toolboxes, crossing his arms like he was trying to hold the conversation together. "They're not ghosts, not people, not anymore. There's something left over, a routine stuck in place, a pattern trying to repeat itself." I opened my mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Patterns don't look at you." "That one does," Ray said. "That one adapts." I felt my skin crawl. Who was she? Ray didn't answer right away. He scratched at the side of his jaw, then exhaled. "Her name was Stephanie. Worked here years before I did. Night shift, quiet, followed the rules. One night she didn't show up for her scheduled break. No one ever saw her leave the building. The cameras glitched out the whole hour she went missing." "What happened to her?" Ray's eyes didn't blink when he said it. "The store kept her." The words hit harder than I expected, not because they were dramatic, but because he said them like a fact he'd lived with for years. A truth you stop questioning because the answer costs too much. Before I could respond, the PA system crackled overhead, a burst of static, then a faint hum, then a voice, a woman's voice, not Linda's, not any employee I'd met. The voice was thin and stretched like it was coming through a long metal tube. "Evan, aisle 5. My stomach tightened. The hairs on my arms rose. Ray froze. "Don't move." The PA clicked off. We stared at each other. The silence afterward felt wrong, like something was listening. "I didn't tell anyone your name," Ray whispered. "Maybe Linda," I started. "No," he cut in. "Linda wouldn't do that. She avoids using names at night." "Why?" "Names draw attention." There was something deeply unsettling about that sentence. I felt it in my ribs first, then the base of my spine. "Don't answer it," Ray said. "Don't go to aisle 5. Not right now." "Why aisle 5? I asked. He swallowed hard. "It's restricted for a reason." Before I could ask what reason, a soft, clattering sound echoed from the far end of the store. Slow at first, then louder, steadier. The unmistakable sound of a shopping cart being pushed across tile. Except the store was empty. Ray's eyes widened and he grabbed my wrist again. "Move now." We walked quickly, not running, not panicking, just moving with enough urgency to stay ahead of the sound. But the cart didn't slow. It followed, wheels rattling, metal vibrating, always turning the same corners we did. We cut through the home furnishings aisle. The noise followed. We moved into automotive. The noise followed. We reached the back of the store near the employee doors, and Ray finally turned to face the sound. It had stopped just around the corner, 1 aisle away, still out of sight. "Stay behind me," he murmured. We waited. 10 seconds, 20, 30, then a single metal clang, like something hitting the side of the cart. Ray inhaled sharply. "They're active tonight, too active." I'll explain later. Right now we need to finish your training route so the system doesn't flag us." "The system?" I asked. He didn't elaborate. Instead, he led me towards side storage where boxes of overstock lined the concrete walls. He moved with familiarity, not fear, like someone who'd learned to live with danger by treating it like background noise. When he was sure we were alone, he glanced at the floor, then at me. "There's something I didn't tell you. You weren't supposed to see an echo on your first night. It usually takes a week, maybe 2. They're cautious at first." "Why did she appear so early?" Ray hesitated, then said, "Because you're new, and new people attract curiosity." Curiosity, that word again, as if the store wasn't just reacting to me, as if it were studying me. The scanner in my hand vibrated sharply, an alert. Ray stepped closer, checking the screen. "It's assigning you," he muttered. "Assigning me to what?" "I don't know," he said. "But whatever it is, we need to stay ahead of it, or it'll start creating patterns you can't break away from." That made even less sense, but I nodded anyway. We finished the last of Aisle 3's duties with mechanical efficiency. Scan, stock, straighten, move. The routine helped. So did the presence of another living person. But something was waiting for the moment I was alone again. I felt it. At 1:42 a.m., Ray sent me on my legally required break. He insisted I take it. His insistence wasn't casual, it was protective. 15 minutes, don't stay longer, don't check the cameras, don't look at the windows, don't listen to anyone who says your name. "My name?" I echoed. "Yes," he said. "They'll try." I didn't ask what he meant. Part of me didn't want to know the answer. The break room felt smaller than before, like the walls were leaning inward. The vending machine buzzed louder. The coffee maker hissed softly, releasing the smell of burned grounds. I sat alone at the far table, letting my pulse settle. Only when I finally exhaled did I notice the envelope on the chair beside me. No name, no writing, just an old, yellowed envelope folded once. I shouldn't have touched it, but I did. Inside was a single piece of paper, torn from a notebook. The handwriting wasn't modern. The ink had faded to brown. It said, "Second shift orientation. Do not let them learn your routine. Do not let them memorize your route. Do not let them know your name." And at the bottom, in shaky letters, "If you're reading this, it's already too late." The break room door creaked. I looked up. Someone stood in the doorway. Not Linda, not Ray, someone else. Someone wearing the old blue vest. Her hair hung over her face, and she spoke, this time with a voice like wind pushing through old vents. "Evan." My blood turned to ice. I didn't turn my chair. I didn't stand. I didn't breathe. Rule 5 whispered through my mind like a warning from another life. If you hear footsteps behind you after 3 a.m., do not turn around. But she wasn't behind me. She was in front of me, and I had no rule for that. Her head tilted, her voice stretched thin. "You should not be here yet." The overhead light flickered, the break room chilled. Then a hand grabbed my shoulder from behind, a real hand, human. "Ray, don't look at her," he whispered through clenched teeth. "Get up, now." I obeyed without question. When I stood, he stepped between us like someone shielding a child from traffic. But the figure in the doorway didn't move, didn't protest, didn't vanish. She simply turned and walked away. Except she didn't walk like a person. She walked like a memory replaying itself. Ray shut the break room door and locked it. His breathing was sharp, controlled. "That," he said, "wasn't supposed to happen on your first night." Then he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not fear, recognition. "They're choosing you," he said, "and that's not good." Before I could ask what that meant, the PA system crackled to life again. This time the voice wasn't stretching or thin. It was clear, human, and it said, "Evan Carter, please report to aisle 5. Ray's face drained of color. "Don't go," he whispered. But the problem, the one he didn't say out loud, was that I already knew I would. Part of me felt pulled, summoned, as if something in aisle 5 wasn't calling me, but waiting. And somehow it had been waiting for a very long time. I didn't go to aisle 5 right away. I should make that clear. Not because I wasn't curious. Curiosity is the one thing that store seems to feed on. But because Ray wouldn't let go of my arm. He kept his hand clamped on my jacket, like he thought I might get pulled into the floor if he loosened his grip. The PA system had gone silent, and the break room felt hollow after the voice spoke my name, like something had withdrawn into the walls, waiting, watching. "You said they're choosing me," I told him, my voice still shaking. "What does that mean?" Ray didn't answer right away. He was listening again. Not for footsteps, not for breathing. He was tuned into the electricity itself, the way the lights buzzed, the vibration under the tiles, the rhythm of the air pumps on the ceiling. He wasn't checking for people. He was checking for patterns. After a moment, he finally let go of my arm. "We're going back to the floor," he said, "but slowly, carefully. Don't make any sudden turns. And don't react if you hear anything." "Anything?" I asked. "Anything," he repeated. We stepped out of the break room, and the store greeted us with a strange, pregnant stillness. Even the refrigerators seemed to hum softer, like something had told them to quiet down. That was the moment I sensed it. Something was shifting, not physically, not in the aisles, in the atmosphere. The store was awake, and it was paying attention. I'd never thought about a building having awareness before, but that night, I couldn't ignore the feeling. The Ridgefield Walmart wasn't just sitting on land with history. It was breathing in it, feeding from it, pulling it upward through its vents and tiles and fluorescent lights. "Stay close," Ray whispered. We walked down the main aisle, careful, alert. I caught myself staring too long at the reflections in the floor, afraid that my own shadow would do something I wasn't doing. When we passed the home goods aisle, I saw the woman in the old vest again, not standing but reflected. Her figure stretched across the glossy tile like a shadow cast by something that wasn't physically present. Long hair, slumped shoulders, the outline of a badge from a uniform Walmart stopped issuing in 2006. I froze. Ray didn't stop walking. He only murmured softly, "Eyes up, Evan. Don't give them acknowledgement. That's how they grow." Grow. That word lodged itself in my spine. "What do you mean, grow?" I whispered. Ray swallowed. "Focus on your job. The rules keep the boundaries steady. If we keep the boundaries steady, the patterns stay predictable. Predictable means manageable." "And unpredictable?" He didn't answer. The silence was an answer on its own. We reached the front registers. Every screen was lit up with the idle blue interface, all of them glowing quietly in the dark. But as we passed register 4, the screen flickered. Once, then twice, and the interface changed. It displayed a receipt, a long receipt, a receipt for items that had never been scanned. Boys' shoes, birthday candles, a bag of oranges, motor oil, a VHS tape, a VHS tape. This store hadn't sold VHS tapes since before I graduated. "What is that?" I asked. Ray pushed me gently forward. "Residual purchase? Ignore it." But I couldn't, because the receipt wasn't just unusual. It was wrong. The total at the bottom said 0.00. The timestamp read 12 a.m., 12 a.m., 12 a.m. 12 Maram, repeating like a broken loop. The cashier name printed was Miles. I turned to Ray sharply. "Miles, that's the guy you told me about." Ray closed his eyes for half a second. "Keep walking." "No," I said. "What happened to him?" Ray opened his eyes and looked at me with something almost like pity. "He tried to help too much." "Help who?" "The wrong ones." Before I could ask more, the store lights dimmed. Just a little, but enough for every color to drain from the shelves. Enough to make my breath shorten, enough to make Ray tense like something hot had brushed against his back. He whispered, "They're moving." I didn't ask who. I didn't need to, because a sound drifted from the far end of the store, a soft, distant murmur, not footsteps, not talking, shopping, dozens of indistinct voices mingling, the sounds of carts, the rustle of items being picked up and put back, the automatic beep of imaginary barcodes being scanned. But there were no customers, not one. Every hair on my body stood on end. Ray lowered his voice to almost nothing. "That's their routine. When the store wakes up after midnight, they do what they remember doing. It's harmless as long as you don't step into their path." "What happens if you do?" "You interrupt the routine," he said, "and then they give you attention." He didn't need to elaborate. I'd already seen what attention looked like. "They're early tonight," he muttered, "something stirring them up." A sudden crash echoed from the back of the store. A stack of plastic storage bins toppled over, hitting the floor in a stuttering rhythm that sounded almost intentional. 3 beats, pause, 2 beats, like knocking, not random. Patterned, repeated. I whispered, "Was that them?" "No," Ray said. "That was for you." My throat tightened. "For me?" "You heard the PA. They want you in aisle 5. Why?" Ray kept scanning the aisles like he expected something to emerge. "Because someone new changes the internal system. Your presence shifts the patterns, and the echoes, they sense new energy like heat." "But why aisle 5 specifically?" Ray hesitated, and when he spoke, it was the first time I heard fear in his voice. Not fear of the echoes, not fear of being watched, fear of the truth. "Aisle 5 is where the first disappearance happened." My blood ran cold. "Who?" But he didn't get to answer, because right then the soft shopping murmurs around us stopped. All at once, like a record needle yanked off a spinning disc. Silence dropped across the store so suddenly my ears rang. Then a slow, dragging sound came from aisle 5, like something heavy was being pulled along tile. Ray's jaw tightened. "Don't look," he whispered. "Don't engage." But it wasn't footsteps, it wasn't a cart. It was something else, something moving. Then the PA system turned on again. A single breath crackled through the speaker. Then a voice, clear, sharp, and unmistakably human, whispered, "Evan, come see." I felt the pull deep in my bones, the invitation, the summons. The store wanted me in aisle 5. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. Ray grabbed my hand again. "Don't go. Not yet. Not until you're ready." "How do I get ready?" "You don't," he said. "You survive long enough for the store to lose interest." I didn't tell him the truth, because the truth was simple, terrifying, and impossible to ignore. I didn't think the store would ever lose interest in me, not after tonight, not after the echoes started whispering my name, and not after the dragging sound in aisle 5 finally stopped, directly beneath one of the overhead cameras, the very camera that flickered twice, then pointed itself toward me, not panned, pointed, as if something behind the lens had leaned forward to get a better look. The camera stayed fixed on me, its small internal motor whirring quietly like a whisper through plastic. I'd worked in enough warehouses to know security cameras aren't supposed to move on their own. They don't adjust angles, they don't track. They're positioned by hand, tightened into place, and left alone unless management orders a full sweep. This one wasn't sweeping, it was watching. The red indicator light blinked twice, too slowly to be mechanical, too deliberately to be random, like an eyelid narrowing, like a creature adjusting its gaze. I took a step back. The camera followed. Ray cursed under his breath and stepped in front of me, blocking its line of sight. "Don't move," he said quietly. "Is it recording?" I whispered. "No," he answered. "It's looking." The distinction made my palms go cold. Something heavy dropped in the distance, a display, maybe boxes, but the sound didn't echo like falling objects. It thudded, dull and weighted, as if something had been placed rather than dropped. I tried to steady my breathing. The air felt thicker, humid in a way fluorescent-lit stores never are. The shelves around us seemed to lean slightly inward like they were listening. "What does aisle 5 have to do with any of this?" I asked. Ray didn't look at me. His eyes were glued to the camera above us, as if daring it to blink again. "Because aisle 5 is where the pattern breaks," he said. "It's the fault line." "Fault line," I repeated. "That's what Linda calls it. The place where the boundary between the echoes and us is thinnest. Every store has one. Ours is aisle 5. Before I could respond, the lights above aisle 5 flickered, not in a ripple this time, but all at once. A sharp staccato pulse like a malfunctioning heartbeat. 3 flickers. Pause. 2 flickers. The same rhythm from before. "It's calling you," Ray said. "What's in there?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not what. Who?" I swallowed. "Then tell me who." Ray hesitated, and when he spoke, it wasn't with his usual rough certainty. It was with something softer, something tired. His name was Julian West. He worked here before Linda, before the remodel. He was the first one the store noticed. "Noticed how?" Ray took a step back from the camera. "Julian was a good worker, reliable, always early, always thorough. He volunteered for the night shift. Thought it would give him time to write his detective novel series. He was in the middle of his 3rd draft when things started happening." "What things?" "Routine disruptions," Ray said. "Echoes appearing in places they shouldn't. Voices on the PA saying his name. A cart that followed him more than once." My stomach tightened. "Like the one that followed me." Ray gave a single, grim nod. "Exactly like that." He leaned in a little, lowering his voice. "Julian tried talking to an echo one night. The air between us seemed to chill. What happened?" Ray's jaw flexed. "No one knows. Cameras glitched for 12 minutes. When the feed came back, Julian was gone. No exit footage, no door alarms, nothing. But his name tag was found in aisle 5. A cold tremor ran down my arms. "And the store?" I asked. "What did it do? How did it react?" Ray exhaled shakily. "It got organized." I frowned. "Organized?" He finally looked at me. Echo behaviors became patterned, predictable, like they were learning, like someone had taught them how to be shoppers again. "And you think Julian taught them?" Ray shook his head. "I think Julian got stuck between their world and ours, and the echoes mirror whatever gets stuck." Before I could process that, the PA system crackled to life again. This time, the voice wasn't whispering. It was calm, pleasant, polite, almost familiar. "Associates, please assist with restocking in aisle 5. Ray went rigid. "That's Julian's voice." "What?" I turned to him sharply. "You said he disappeared." "He did, but the store still uses his voice. It's borrowed. Borrowed, like a recording, like a memory replayed by something that didn't fully understand how humans use sound." The PA clicked off, then aisle 5 lit up. All of it, a sudden blinding brightness that spilled across the tile like a floodlight. I shielded my eyes. Ray grabbed my sleeve again. "Don't go," he said. "But it's not dangerous yet, right?" I asked. "You said echoes don't hurt anyone unless the routine is interrupted." He looked at me with something like grief. "Aisle 5 is the interruption, Evan." The lights above us flickered once. Then the dragging sound came again, this time much closer. Not an object, not a person, something between. A heavy, deliberate movement followed by a scrape. Then a pause. Then another scrape. It was coming toward us. Ray stiffened. "We need to move." "Which way?" I asked, voice tight. He looked down aisle 6, then aisle 4, like he was calculating something in his head. His eyes darted toward the exit sign, then back toward the sound. "We go toward it," he said finally. I stared at him. "Are you out of your mind?" "It senses motion," Ray explained. "If we run, it'll chase. If we stay still, it'll think we're part of the pattern. If we move toward it slowly, deliberately, it'll think we're working." Working. Between survival and deception, Ray chose deception. I couldn't think of anything else to do, so I followed him. We walked down the main aisles slowly, scanning imaginary products, pretending to stock shelves. The dragging sound continued, getting louder, sharper. We reached the intersection of aisle 5. Ray lifted a hand, signaling for me to stop. I did. The store held its breath. The sound stopped. For several seconds, nothing moved. Then, a shadow stretched across the floor, not cast by a body, cast by an absence, a void in the shape of a man. The silhouette drifted across the linoleum like oil spreading on water. It paused at the mouth of aisle 5. Then it turned its head, slowly, toward me. My throat constricted. Ray murmured, barely audible, "Don't let it see your fear." Too late. The shadow elongated, reaching across the tile, stretching toward my feet like it was smelling me. My breath hitched. Then the PA clicked on again. "Evan," Julian's voice said in a tone too calm to be living, "you're late." The shadow lunged. Ray shoved me backward. "Run!" he snapped. And suddenly survival overcame instruction. Training. Rules. Logic. I ran, down the aisle, toward the back of the store, away from the fault line the store had chosen for me. As I sprinted, lights burst to life, one by one, forming a glowing tunnel of white fluorescent that led straight toward the loading dock doors. But the doors weren't the thing that terrified me. It was the fact that every light in that tunnel flickered in a perfect sequence. Left to right, as if the store itself was guiding me or herding me toward something waiting in the dark. The lights guiding me down the aisle didn't feel like a warning sequence anymore. They felt like direction signs, bright, insistent, and far too intelligent. Every time I stumbled or slowed, The next bulb flickered harder, almost snapping me forward like an impatient hand pushing my back. Ray wasn't behind me. I didn't know where he'd gone. I didn't hear footsteps or shouts, only the soft, low hum of the overhead lamps responding to my movement. And behind that hum, the shadows glide. Not a footstep, not a drag, a glide, smooth, almost elegant, like something accustomed to moving without a body. I veered right down the wide center row that cut between clothing and seasonal items. The store felt larger in the dark, the shelves taller and closer, like they'd been rearranged while we weren't looking. My lungs burned, my legs screamed. I passed displays of Halloween costumes, styrofoam pumpkins, rows of winter coats tagged for clearance. But all of it blurred. Something was following me, not fast, just constant. A presence that didn't run because it didn't have to. I was the one out of breath. I was the one who would eventually stop. I rounded the corner toward the loading dock entrance and froze. The loading dock wasn't open. It wasn't even there. In its place was aisle 5. The signs, the numbers, the layout, it was aisle 5. As if the store had rearranged its guts while I was sprinting, as if the building itself had turned inside out and put me exactly where it wanted me. My stomach dropped. I whispered, "No, no, no, no," and took a step back. The lights around me dimmed, leaving only the aisle sign glowing softly. Aisle 5, home storage and cleaning supplies. Except I could see nothing down that aisle except darkness. Deep and swallowing, like a tunnel that had forgotten it was supposed to be a store aisle. Behind me, the hum deepened. A cold rush of air slid across my back as if something had leaned close enough to exhale. I didn't look. I couldn't. Every instinct in my body screamed not to. But some part of me, some utterly human and stupid part, needed to know if Ray had followed me. Needed to know if I'd left him behind. Needed to know if I wasn't alone. "Ray?" I whispered. Something moved behind me, a soft shift of weight, a subtle change in the air pressure. Then, "Don't!" Ray's voice, but not from behind me, from inside aisle 5. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stepped toward the darkness. "Ray, don't follow it," he said again. His voice trembled. Ray never trembled. "It's not me." My knees nearly buckled. That wasn't just fear, that was clarity, the kind that slices through panic and tells you the world is far more dangerous than you realized. Something behind me whispered, not Julian's voice, not the woman in the old vest, something else, something that had never been human. A low, vibrating murmur that rippled through my spine, a sound that felt like it was trying to reshape the bones of my neck, a sound that said, "Forward, forward, forward," a command, a lure. "Evan," Ray said again, if it was Ray, "walk back, slowly. Do not step inside. Do not engage. That's not where you go." A flicker of movement appeared at the far end of aisle 5. Just a silhouette, just a blur, but enough to make the air around me vibrate. A figure leaned out of the darkness, tall, thin, limbs too long by a few degrees to be human. It didn't walk, it unfolded. Like a shadow stretching its arms, and its head cocked to one side, as if studying me the way I'd study a strange insect crossing my kitchen floor. The lights buzzed. Then a voice, still from aisle 5, still sounding like Ray, said, "Evan, I'm hurt. Help me." I shook my head hard. "No, that's not you." Silence. Then the voice changed. The same voice, but wrong, bent, warped. "Help me," it said again, like a recording played through a speaker full of water. The silhouette moved closer. It wasn't walking. It was drifting. Ray's real voice came from my left, sudden and sharp. Even. Left. Now. I lunged in the direction of his voice without thinking. The shadow's arm snapped out like a whip, fast, silent, stopping inches from where I had been a moment earlier. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I sprinted toward the employee hallway, my body moving before my brain caught up. Ray was there. Real Ray, shaking, sweating, pale. He grabbed my jacket and pulled me behind a metal shelf stacked with shipping pallets. Only then did I hear my own heartbeat hammering against my skull. What the hell was that? I gasped. Ray wiped a shaking hand down his face. One of the incompletes. The what? The ones who never finished becoming echoes, he said. The ones who died in routines that weren't settled. My chest tightened. What does that even mean? Ray shook his head. Later, you're not ready for that explanation yet. Then what were they trying to do? Why aisle 5? Why call me there? Ray hesitated, which was answer enough. Ray, they're testing you, he finally said. Testing me for what? He swallowed hard. To see if you'll replace Julian. My breath caught. Replace him how? Ray didn't answer, because in that moment the PA system crackled again. This time there was no voice, only a slow rhythmic tapping, like fingers on a desk. Tick, 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 Ray whispered. It's learning your pace. A sound escaped my throat that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sob. My pace? What does that mean? It means, Ray said, you've been here long enough for the store to start building a routine around you. The tapping stopped. Then, all associates, Julian's voice said, please return to your designated responsibilities. The lights brightened. The murmuring resumed. The dragging faded. It was like the store had snapped back into place, like nothing had happened. But something had. Ray leaned close, voice low and fierce. Listen to me, Evan. The store is aligning itself with you. That's why the echoes appear early. That's why the incompletes are active. That's why it's calling your name. My mouth went dry. Ray, what happens if it finishes aligning? He looked at me with the expression of someone who's watched this unfold before. You stop being a worker, he said softly, and you become part of the pattern. My body went cold, too cold. And how long do I have before that happens? I whispered. Ray didn't speak. He didn't need to, because at that exact moment the overhead intercom clicked one last time and delivered the message that confirmed everything he feared. Night Supervisor Evan Carter, the voice said, perfectly calm. Welcome to your 5th week. My first shift wasn't even over, but the store had already decided my future. The announcement echoing through the store. Night Supervisor Evan Carter, welcome to your 5th week, still rang in my ears long after the intercom clicked off. The air didn't just feel cold now, it felt thick, weighted, like the building itself was reacting to my name being spoken aloud in its circuitry. Ray didn't move at first. He stood frozen beside me, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the ceiling tiles as if expecting something to drop through them. That wasn't a mistake, he said finally. I know, I whispered. Then you also know what it means. I didn't answer, not because I disagreed, but because I did know, and the truth of it landed hard in my chest. The store wasn't following my routine. It was building one for me. Ray took a step back, rubbing the side of his face like he was trying to wake himself from a bad dream. Evan, you weren't supposed to get this far. I didn't do anything, I said. That's the problem. You followed the rules. I frowned. They're the rules. Yes, and the rules reward compliance. He looked at me, then really looked. The echoes don't bother the workers who fight the building. They bother the ones who fit. The ones who fit. The ones who can replace what's missing. My breath hitched. Julian. Ray nodded once. But before I could speak, the lights above us trembled, an electric shudder rippling through the fixtures like a warning breath. Then, a sound. Not the dragging from the incomplete. Not the murmuring of residual shopper voices. Not the rhythmic tapping from the PA system. This sound was new, a low, deep groan from somewhere beneath the floor, not mechanical, not settling concrete, alive. Ray stiffened. The tunnels. What about them? They're shifting. My heartbeat stumbled. Shifting how? Ray didn't answer right away. He pressed his palms against the shelf behind him as if bracing for impact. The tunnels don't move often. They're old, fixed, buried deep. When they shift, something down there is reorganizing. I swallowed hard. Reorganizing what? Ray looked at me with a grim resignation. The collection. A fresh chill crawled up my spine. Images flashed in my mind, badges on rocky shelves, personal items arranged with care, voices cataloging codes in the break room refrigerator, a ritual, a system, a structure. Why now? I asked. Ray's gaze softened just a little. Not pity. Recognition. Because the store thinks you're ready. I was about to respond when a new sound snapped both of our heads toward the left aisle, an abrupt clatter like a metal shelf tipping, followed by the distinct clinking of small objects hitting tile. I grabbed Ray's jacket. What was that? He shook his head. Not an echo. That's too physical, too heavy. We crept toward the sound, weaving through aisles until the fluorescent lights began to glitch again, once, twice, then a slow, pulsing dimness. Seasonal aisle, back left corner. When we turned the corner, my stomach dropped. The floor was covered in keys, hundreds of them, loose keys scattered across the tile, rusted, bent, shiny, new. Car keys, house keys, locker keys, padlock keys, every size and shape imaginable. Ray inhaled sharply. This isn't possible. I stepped forward, and the keys shifted under my weight. Some had tags attached, faded labels in handwriting I couldn't read. Some had plastic fobs with names etched into them. But then I saw something that made my pulse stumble. A familiar shape. A Honda Civic fob. My Honda Civic fob. Same scratches on the metal, same chipped black plastic, same tiny dent near the unlock button. My keys, I whispered, my throat tightening. Ray's voice was low, urgent. Don't touch them. But they're mine. That doesn't matter. If they're here, it means the store took them. Why? To keep you from leaving. The words hit harder than I expected, because they felt true. I crouched, careful, trying not to disturb the metallic sea around me. The air smelled faintly of dust and something else, something metallic but warm, like the scent of old tools left too long in damp soil. Ray, I said, why keys? He crouched beside me, his face pale. Keys don't just open things. They represent access, entry, exit, autonomy. Everything the store needs to control. My hand hovered over the Civic fob. I didn't touch it, but something else did. A soft scrape, a shift. The pile of keys moved, just slightly, like something underneath them was breathing. I froze. Ray grabbed my arm again. Stand up, slowly. I rose without breaking eye contact with the floor. The keys trembled, then slid, just a little, like the floor had exhaled. The keys parted gently, as if swept aside by an invisible hand, and underneath them, the tile wasn't tile anymore. Not white, not smooth. The section beneath the pile was old wood, raw, splintered, dark with moisture, like a ceiling beam from a mine, and carved into the wood, deep grooves forming a phrase, was something that stole the breath right out of my chest. "Welcome, supervisor." The keys slid again, covering the message like a closing curtain. Ray's voice dropped to a whisper. "We need to go. Now." I nodded, stepping back. But before we could move, a sharp chirp echoed overhead. My scanner, it had activated on its own, the screen flickering to life, with a system message. "Associate, Evan Carter. Route update required. Begin your assigned checks. Aisle 5, break room, stock corridor." A timestamp, 12 a.m., recurring, a looping timestamp. Ray exhaled shakily. "It's happening faster than I expected." "What is?" I asked. "The integration." The word hung between us like a cold draft from below. He continued, "It's starting to replace Julian's old route with yours. If it completes the loop, you'll become the point of reference for all after-midnight routines." "Meaning?" Ray met my eyes. "You'll stop being the worker." I waited. "And become part of the instructions." My pulse spiked. "Ray, I don't want that." "I know," he said. "So how do I stop it?" Ray hesitated, jaw tightening. "You don't," he said softly. "You survive long enough to get the transfer." "Linda's transfer?" Ray shook his head. "No, not hers." "Then whose?" He swallowed. "Julian's." Before I could respond, the PA system clicked again. A single sound echoed through the store, a door unlocking. Then Julian's voice whispered, "Aisle 5, Evan. You're almost ready." The lights went black. Something behind us breathed. And the keys on the floor shifted again, this time forming a path, straight into the dark. The keys formed a narrow path across the floor, thin at first, then widening as it stretched deeper into the darkened seasonal aisle. Each metal piece clicked lightly into place, shifting like they were being arranged by invisible fingertips. The sound was delicate, precise, almost careful, like whatever was building the path didn't want to scare me. It wanted me to follow it. Ray's hand tightened around my forearm. "Don't step on it." I wasn't planning to. My voice came out shaky, barely mine. "Then listen to me very carefully," Ray whispered. "Back away, slow, no sound, no sudden—" The PA system crackled sharply, interrupting him with a burst of static that felt like it tore straight through the air. Then Julian's voice filled the store. Not the warped echo copy version from earlier. This time it was crisp, steady, human. "Step forward, Evan." Ray gripped me harder. "Don't." "Why me?" I asked him, trying to steady my breath. "Why is it always calling me?" "Because the store thinks you're predictable," he said. "Routine-oriented, structured. The echoes understand patterns and you're consistent." I followed the rules. "Yes," he said, "and that's exactly why it's choosing you." I shook my head. "No, I'm not letting some building, something, write my life into a loop." Ray's expression tightened, a mix of fear and something heavier, something that looked like regret. "It doesn't need your permission." A soft tapping began under the floorboards, slow, rhythmic, beckoning, like knuckles on wood. Tap, 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 the same pattern again. 3, pause, 2. The pattern of the tunnels shifting, the pattern of the store waking, the pattern I'd heard earlier when something dragged itself across tile to watch me. I felt it deep in my sternum. That tapping wasn't random, it wasn't noise. It was a countdown. Ray moved first. He pulled me backward by my sleeve, guiding me away from the path of keys, forcing each step to be slow and controlled. Not because he wanted to be careful, because we were being watched. The darkness in aisle 5 hummed. Not the overhead lights, not the refrigerators, a different hum, lower, like breath vibrating through old wood. We were almost clear of the path when something at the far end of it lifted its head. Not a person, not an echo, a shape, a silhouette, so tall its head grazed the hanging promotional banners, limbs too long, bending at angles that made my stomach twist. Its hands, if they were hands, were pale and narrow, fingers stretching like sharpened branches. But the worst part wasn't its shape, it was the sound. The soft metallic jingle, hundreds of keys rattling inside its chest. Ray sucked in a breath. One of the collectors. "What is that?" I rasped. "They organize the items belonging to the taken," Ray whispered. "Badges, radios, wallets, keys. They keep the old routines intact." "Why is it watching me? Because whatever's happening down there?" Ray gestured toward the floor. "The collectors respond to upcoming changes." "And I'm a change?" "You're a replacement," Ray said. The collector lifted one of its arms, and keys slid off its body like falling rain. They clattered across the tile and formed new lines, new shapes, spelling out something. "Welcome home." I felt my throat close. Ray reacted instantly. He shoved me behind a display of discounted towels and whispered urgently, "We need to get to the break room now." "The break room?" I said. "That's where I heard—" "Yes," he cut in. "It's the only place the collectors don't enter. They can't." "Why?" "Because the break room isn't part of their routine. It's part of ours." The collector took one massive step forward. Keys spilled and rolled around its feet, skittering across the floor like insects scattering from a predator. Ray grabbed my shirt. "Move!" We sprinted, not away, not toward safety, but toward the back of the store, weaving through aisles as the overhead lights flickered violently, like the store itself was having a seizure. Every few seconds, the PA crackled with static fragments. "Ven, don't, ready, supervisor." Julian's voice, broken into pieces, rearranging itself. We tore past aisles that had been empty minutes before, but now were filled with echoes. Shoppers frozen in mid-gesture, their heads snapping toward us like marionettes responding to a puppeteer's tug. Their eyes, where eyes should have been, glimmered with something that wasn't sight. Recognition, acceptance, expectation. I stumbled as one stepped forward, a tall man wearing an old vest with the logo cracked and faded. He touched his badge. The badge wasn't blank. It said, "Even Carter, Night Supervisor." My breath hitched violently. Ray yanked me away just as the echo lifted its arm toward me, fingers stretching like soft clay. We burst into the back hallway, doors slamming shut behind us as if the store itself pushed them closed. The hallway lights steadied, the hum quieted. The store grew still again, almost peaceful, but I could still hear it, the jingle of keys somewhere distant, echoing like wind chimes through old ventilation ducts. Ray leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. "This is escalating too fast." "You keep saying that," I snapped. "What does it mean?" "It means the integration is accelerating. It means the store isn't waiting for your behavior to settle into a pattern." "So what is it doing?" Ray met my eyes. "It's forcing your routine." I felt my stomach twist. "How much time do I have?" He didn't answer. "Ray, how much?" He closed his eyes. "Maybe one night, maybe less." My knees nearly buckled. "How do I stop it?" "You can't," I almost shouted. "Then what the hell do I do?" "You follow one rule," he said quietly. "One rule above all the others." "What rule?" Ray hesitated. His jaw tightened. His eyes shifted toward the ceiling as if checking for listeners. "The rule Julian broke," he whispered. I stared at him, not understanding, not fully. "What did Julian do?" I asked. Ray swallowed hard. "He talked to them." My skin prickled. "The echoes?" "No," he said. "The ones beneath the echoes." "The collectors?" "No," Ray whispered. "The ones the collectors work for." A soft creaking echoed above us, like weight shifting on the ceiling tiles. Not footsteps, breathing, slow, deep, and patient. Ray looked up, and his face drained of color. "They're listening." "Who?" I whispered. Ray's voice was barely audible. "The supervisors." A cold wind slid down the hallway, carrying the faint smell of damp soil, and then the PA clicked on one more time. This time, the voice wasn't Julian's. It was Linda's. Calm, measured, almost proud. "Evan, report to the stock corridor." Ray's eyes went wide. "No," he whispered. "No, God, no, not now." The lights above us dimmed. The air cooled. The store breathed in, and the voice repeated, firmer, "Evan, report, now." The fluorescent lights in the hallway narrowed to a thin, trembling band of white above us. The rest of the building dimmed to a bruised blue-gray, as if the store had narrowed its focus to a single point. The back corridor. My destination. "Evan, report, now." Linda's voice rolled through the PA system again. Unbroken, steady, completely detached from the panic rising in my chest. Ray grabbed my wrist. "Don't go," she said. "That wasn't Linda." His grip tightened. "You think Linda sounds like that?" Calm, gentle, like she's asking, not ordering. The system is copying her voice. It's calling you the way it called Julian. My pulse hammered. "But why me?" Ray exhaled shakily. "Because you listened." I stared at him. "Listened to what?" He swallowed. "The rules." The overhead lights flickered twice, not in warning this time, but in acknowledgement, like the store was nodding, confirming. Down the hallway, the door leading to the main stock corridor creaked open. Not fully. Just enough to show darkness waiting inside. Just enough to show it was unlocked. Just enough to show it was intentional. The PA crackled again, but this time the voice was different, layered, like multiple versions of Linda speaking at once, overlapping in perfect but unnatural harmony. "Supervisor Carter, report to the stock corridor. Immediate compliance required." My breath caught. My title. Ray whispered, "It's designating you." "No," I said quickly. "No, I'm not." "You are," Ray said. "Or it thinks you are. And thinking is enough." The lights outside the corridor dimmed further. A warm, humid breath drifted out. A smell of old concrete, wet earth, something metallic beneath it. Something like the tunnels, the keys, the footprints, the knocking, everything led here. "Evan," Ray said quietly, "we need to get out of this hallway before it decides for you." "And go where?" "The employee bathroom." "What?" "It's the only other neutral zone besides the break room. They can't manipulate the routine inside employee-only areas." He tugged my arm. "Come on, before—" The overhead lights snapped off, all of them. We froze in absolute darkness. A slow, rising hum rolled through the building like a deep inhale. Metal shelves creaked, vents groaned. Something heavy dragged across tile far, far down the hallway. I felt the air move behind me, cold, deliberate. Ray whispered, "Don't turn around." Something shifted its weight. Not a footstep, not a breath, a presence directly behind me. My rib cage tightened, my limbs locked. Everything in my body screamed to run, but I couldn't. My instincts had split in two. One said run, one said stay still, neither said turn around. Then a whisper brushed the back of my ear. Close, too close. You've done well. The voice wasn't human, not echo-like, not glitching, not warped. It was smooth, perfect, cold. The lights flickered back on in a violent burst. I spun around despite Ray's shout, but nothing was behind me. Nothing except the faint, shimmering outline of a figure dissolving into the hallway walls, like mist evaporating under a lamp. I staggered back. What was that? Ray's face had drained of all color. A supervisor. I shook my head. I thought the supervisors were, I don't even know, systems, forces, the things the collectors answer to. Both, Ray said. Neither. They enforce the patterns. They decide when a worker becomes part of the structure. And I pointed behind me, it talked to me. That's because you're being evaluated. I swallowed hard. Evaluated for what? Ray's jaw tightened. Advancement. The word hit me like a physical blow. I staggered toward the wall, catching myself on a shelf filled with unopened boxes. I felt the building vibrate faintly beneath my palm, like a heartbeat pulsing through concrete. Ray, what is the stock corridor? My voice cracked. What happens in there? He looked away. That's where the integration completes. A clatter echoed from deeper in the hallway. Hard to tell where. Echoed metal sounds tend to overlap, smearing direction. Then another sound, a shuffle, a slow scrape across tile. Something was coming. Ray grabbed my shoulders. Evan, look at me. The store has picked you, but you are not finished yet. There is still a way out. How? I demanded. Transfers. Linda's transfer. No, he hissed. Linda's transfers are lies. Hers feed the building. Julian's transfer, his real one, is what got him out. You need to find it. You said Julian didn't get out. He didn't. Ray's eyes darkened. But his transfer might still be here. The scrape grew louder, closer. It sounded like someone dragging a pallet jack with no wheels. Move, Ray said. Bathroom, now. We ran. We slipped between two steel support racks, just as something huge entered the far end of the hallway. I didn't look. I didn't want to. Whatever it was made the shelves tremble as it passed. We reached the employee bathroom door. Ray shoved me inside, slammed the door, and locked it. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The fluorescent light buzzed weakly overhead. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and old mop water. Mundane, safe, familiar. I leaned against the sink, chest heaving. What do we do now? I whispered. Ray crouched, catching his breath. Now you tell me everything you've seen. I hesitated. Everything? Everything, he repeated. So I told him. I told him about the old vest woman with no eyes, about the cart that followed me, about the keys in the seasonal aisle, about the wood under the tile, about the collector with keys inside its chest, about the shadows that weren't shadows, about the voice using Linda's tone, about the supervisor behind me. Ray listened silently, piecing every detail like someone assembling the edges of a puzzle he'd never wanted to finish. When I finished, he nodded once. I know what the store is doing, he said quietly. What? It's preparing your route. My route. Your forever route. Cold washed over me. Ray, there has to be a way to stop this, a way to interrupt it. There is, he said, standing again. But you won't like it. Tell me. He stared into the mirror, the only mirror that didn't distort at night. Supervisor routes are built from the belongings of the previous one. What does that mean? It means, he whispered, we need to find Julian's things. My heart stopped. In the tunnels. I swallowed hard. You mean the tunnels under the stockroom? The ones the collectors use? The ones with the badges and— Yes, Ray said. We need to get you down there before the store finishes building the route above. Why? Because once it finishes, Ray murmured, you won't be able to leave the surface. Ever again. I felt my pulse hammering against my neck. And what happens to me? Ray met my eyes, voice soft with dread. You become part of the foundation. Before I could speak, the lights in the bathroom flickered. Once. Then again. Then the PA system crackled overhead, with a voice no longer borrowing Linda's tone. This time, it was deeper. Older, like something speaking from inside the walls. Supervisor Carter, it said, your route begins now. The bathroom lights steadied just long enough for Ray to exhale one thin, shaky breath before flickering once more, this time in a pattern that felt intentional. Not random, not electrical, rhythmic, a signal, a warning, a summons. Supervisor Carter, the voice repeated through the PA, resonating through the vents like a low-frequency vibration. Your route begins now. Ray moved first. He grabbed my sleeve, yanked me away from the mirror, because mirrors, he told me, were gateways for things that didn't need doors, and pushed me toward the stall furthest from the entrance. We need to get below ground before it closes off the access, he said. His voice had shifted, not panicked but urgent, focused, determined. Once your route begins, the store will adjust the corridors to push you where it wants you. We have minutes, maybe less. A violent shudder passed through the ceiling tiles overhead, dumping a fine shower of dust across the sink counter. Something heavy shifted above us, the same dragging weight I had heard the night before. Something massive moving deliberately toward the bathroom. I lowered my voice to a whisper. They can't enter here, right? Ray shook his head. Collectors can't. Echoes can't. But the higher ones, the supervisors, he nodded grimly. They don't enter rooms. They repurpose them. That word, repurpose, hit my stomach like ice water. Ray, I whispered, what happens if they repurpose this one? He opened his mouth to answer. He didn't get the chance. The fluorescent light overhead bulged outward, like something pressed against it from the other side, then went dark. The next bulb dimmed, then the next. The entire bathroom dropped into a heavy, unnatural shadow. Ray grabbed my hand. We run, now. He shoved the stall door open and pushed aside the maintenance hatch behind the toilet, a small metal square I'd never noticed. He pried it up with his fingers, revealing a narrow crawl space descending into darkness. A stale burst of cold air drifted upward, the smell of wet limestone, coal dust, old water, and something faintly organic underneath, not rot, not decay, more like old breath. Ray slid into the opening first, climbing down a rusted maintenance ladder. Come on, don't think, just follow. The PA crackled again overhead. Supervisor Carter, proceed with your route. My heart thudded hard. It knows I'm not doing it. It always knows. Ray's voice echoed below me. They built the rules to track deviations. Every step you take that isn't part of your route alerts the system. And it's making a route for me now. Yes, Ray said, and the longer we avoid it, the more aggressively it adapts. Another light above us burst with a sharp pop, sending tiny sparks scattering across the tile floor. Ray shouted up at me. Move! I climbed into the hatch, gripping the cold aluminum ladder as tightly as I could. My boots slipped once, wet with panic sweat, but I held on, descending into a shaft that felt too narrow for breath. Above me, the bathroom door hinges screeched. Something was forcing it open, not a person, not an echo, something that reshaped walls when it wanted to. I scrambled down as fast as I could, boots hitting each rung with frantic clanging. The maintenance shaft grew darker, colder. The air felt heavy, saturated with old minerals and the faint hum of something living in the stone itself. Ray reached the bottom first and swung his flashlight upward, catching the last few rungs. "Hurry," he whispered. "It's entering the room." My foot slipped again, but I dropped the final 5 feet and hit the packed soil with a thud, stumbling into Ray's shoulder. He grabbed my arm to steady me just as he pulled the hatch closed overhead. The instant the metal slab sealed, something slammed into it from above, not with anger, with intention. A slow, firm pressure, testing the barrier, feeling its shape, judging if it could be reshaped. Ray pressed both palms upward, holding the hatch in place as it shuddered under the weight of something on the other side. "Come on," he hissed. "We need distance before it starts rewiring the walls." He grabbed my sleeve and led me down the low corridor. The maintenance passage sloped sharply downward, illuminated only by Ray's flashlight, a thin, trembling beam cutting through the darkness. The air grew colder, not naturally cold, hollow cold, structured cold, the kind of cold that existed because something was designing it that way. "Where does this lead?" I whispered. Ray kept walking. "The auxiliary vent chambers above the tunnels." "So not the tunnels themselves?" "No, these were designed for repairs. They're older, safer." A low rumbling vibrated through the packed earth beneath us, like deep stone settling or shifting. My pulse spiked. "Ray," I whispered, "what happens if the supervisors find us?" He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. "They won't hurt you." "That's not comforting." "They won't hurt you," he repeated. "They don't hurt supervisors. They integrate them." The tunnel curved sharply to the right, leading into a wider chamber where rusted ventilation ducts hung overhead like exposed ribs. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling, echoing off the stone in sharp metallic plinks that echoed far too long. The walls around us changed, from carved clay to rough rock, natural rock, rock that shouldn't have been this close to a Walmart basement. Ray stopped and knelt beside a low pipe, running his fingers across a faint mark carved into the stone beside it. A shape, a symbol. A circle divided into 3 uneven segments. It looked familiar. "What is that?" I whispered. Ray angled the flashlight so I could see it clearly. The lines had been carved deep into the stone, too deep for a pocket knife, too precise for a shaky hand. The grooves were smooth, clean, intentional. "It's a supervisor mark," Ray said. "They use symbols to designate territory and stage progression." "Stage progression?" Ray nodded. "Every supervisor route has 3 phases, 3 segments, 3 inevitabilities." My stomach tightened. "And mine?" "You're already in the first phase." The ground trembled softly. A slow exhale shuddered through the chamber. Not Ray's, not mine. The tunnel responded to the supervisor's presence above us. The air grew still, expectant. Ray grabbed my shoulder, pulling me close. "We don't have much time," he whispered. "We need to find Julian's belongings before Phase 2 begins." "What happens in Phase 2? His voice lowered to almost nothing. "You stop running." Something cracked overhead, the sharp snap of wood being bent in the wrong direction, and we both froze. Ray pulled me deeper into the chamber. "We need to move. Now." I followed, my breath ragged, my hands shaking as the tunnel seemed to narrow around us. The darkness stretched forward like a throat swallowing us whole, and behind us the sound of something descending into the maintenance shaft echoed. Slow, steady, inevitable. The supervisor was coming. Ray's flashlight beam trembled as he moved deeper into the sloping rock corridor, its narrow glow catching jagged edges and water-worn grooves that looked older than the store above us, older than Millfield itself. The air thickened the farther we went, pressing against my chest like the tunnels were breathing us in, inch by inch. Behind us, the echo of something descending through the maintenance shaft continued, slow, rhythmic, and deliberate, not scraping, not dragging, stepping. The supervisors didn't drag anything. They didn't need to. "Keep your pace steady," Ray whispered without slowing. "If you sprint, it notices." "I thought it already noticed." "It has," he said. "Now it's watching how you respond." I swallowed hard. "And what does that determine?" "Phase classification." "Which means?" Ray hesitated. "It determines what it becomes for you." The ground trembled faintly, dust sifting from the ceiling like powdered bone. A sound followed, low, almost a grunt, but resonant, like a breath being pushed through cavernous lungs. My skin prickled. "That's not human." "No," Ray said. "But it remembers how to be." We reached a fork in the rock passage, 3 tunnels splitting in different directions, each marked with symbols carved into the stone at chest level. Ray ran the flashlight over them quickly, a vertical line, a circle divided in half, a spiral wrapped inward. He cursed under his breath. "It's changing the map." "What do they mean?" "Territory markers," Ray said. "Routes, outcomes." "Outcomes?" "Supervisor pathways aren't all identical." Ray placed his hand on the spiral and pulled it away sharply. "Some end above ground, some go deeper, some never end." I stared at him. "What do you mean, some never end?" Ray didn't meet my eyes. "If you've ever read a disappearing person's report that says, 'last seen entering their workplace closet,' you're reading about someone who walked into a live root." Cold slid up my spine. "And the store swallows them?" Ray nodded once. "They work forever." I felt my stomach twist, not with fear this time, but with anger. "So what? We're just considered resources?" "Not humans," Ray said quietly. "Patterns." I clenched my jaw. "Which tunnel?" Ray pointed to the rightmost one, the one with the circle split unevenly. "This symbol is older. It means the tunnel hasn't been touched since the last supervisor used it. That gives us the best chance to get ahead." "And Julian?" "He used this one." A chill snapped down my back. The rightmost tunnel was narrower than the maintenance passage behind us, the walls pressing close enough that I could brush both with outstretched hands. The rock here was darker, almost black, streaked with mineral veins like frozen lightning. The ground sloped sharply downward and the air felt colder, heavier. As we descended, the sound of the supervisor following us shifted pitch. The footsteps grew slower, louder, as if it was no longer simply walking but matching my pace. Ray whispered, "It's choosing its form." "What does that mean?" "The deeper we go, the more it aligns itself with your pattern. It's preparing to make itself familiar." "Familiar how?" He stopped walking long enough to turn and look directly at me. "It's going to sound like someone you trust." My throat tightened. "Like Linda." Ray shook his head. "Like someone more intimate. Someone tied to who you were before this job." Before I could respond, the footsteps behind us paused, stopped, and then shifted into something else. Soft, delicate, gentle. Bare feet on stone. A woman's footsteps. Ray grabbed my arm. Don't respond. Don't look back." We moved faster, but not enough to seem panicked. A strange rule Ray kept repeating: patterns, behavior, routine. The tunnels rewarded controlled movement. They punished panic. After another 30 meters, the corridor opened into a wider cavern, an underground pocket carved by ancient water, its walls glistening with moisture. Old wooden supports crossed overhead, cracked and bowing under the weight of centuries, but I barely saw any of that, because in the center of the cavern lay a pile of objects, not random debris, arranged items: a ring, a wallet, a yellowed Polaroid, a keycard, a broken watch, a small flashlight, long dead, a Walmart badge with a familiar face, Julian Hart, night supervisor. Ray exhaled, a mixture of relief and dread. "This is it." "This is what?" I whispered. "Julian's personal effects. These are the anchors to his route." I knelt beside the pile, hands shaking as I reached for the badge. The lamination was cracked, the edges warped by moisture and age. Julian's face stared out at me, tired eyes, stubble along his jaw, the faintest ghost of a smile. He looked like a man who'd tried to do everything right. But that wasn't what froze me. It was the empty space beside the badge, a rectangular indentation in the dirt where something used to lie. My breath caught. "Ray, I see it," he murmured. It's missing." "One piece," he said. "One item is missing." "What was it?" Ray knelt beside me, frowning. "I don't know." A sudden whisper drifted from the tunnel behind us. "Evan!" My chest tightened. That voice. No, impossible. It sounded like my mother. Ray stood immediately. "Don't answer it." "She's not here," I whispered. "She's not anything," Ray corrected. "It's shaping itself, matching your memory to hasten phase 2. The voice came again, softer, closer. "Sweetheart, come here." My stomach flipped. How does it know her voice? Ray's expression darkened. "Because you've been remembering her since yesterday. The echoes can't reach inside your mind, but the supervisors can. They use memory as a blueprint." I stepped back instinctively. The cavern trembled. The voice sharpened. "Evan." Ray grabbed the badge and shoved it into my hands. "Take everything of Julian's, everything left. Personal items disrupt the pattern construction. If we gather what we can, we slow the route they're building for you." The whisper behind us deepened, the tone shifting. Less my mother now, more a distorted version of her, a mimic learning its shape. "Evan, turn around." "I'm not," I whispered. "You're not," Ray echoed. The cavern shuddered again. Pebbles rattled down the walls. The footsteps behind us, bare and soft, were now only feet away. Ray leaned in, voice low and urgent. "Phase 2 is starting. We need to get deeper before it shows you its real face." He grabbed the wallet, the ring, the watch, stuffing them into my vest pockets. "Go," he whispered. "Now." I turned toward the next tunnel. Behind us, the voice changed a third time. Male now, ragged, familiar, pained. "Evan." Julian's voice. It was calling for help. Julian's voice echoed through the cavern, thin, strained, calling my name with a weight that felt too real to ignore. It bounced off the wet stone walls, overlapping itself in warped reverberations that made it impossible to tell where the sound originated. "Evan, help me." My pulse spiked. I took an involuntary step toward the tunnel behind us, the darkness splitting like a throat waiting to swallow anything that approached it. Ray's hand clamped around my shoulder instantly. "Don't," he hissed. "It's a lure." "It sounds like him." "It does because you believe it could be him. The supervisors shape themselves from possibility. Doubt is enough fuel." The voice called out again, This time broken, softer, choked. "Evan, I'm still here." My breath hitched. "Ray, what if Julian is—" "He isn't," Ray snapped, not unkindly, but like someone trying to cut a wire before it could detonate. "Not in the way you mean. The Julian you knew doesn't exist down here anymore." I swallowed hard. "But something of him does." "Yes," Ray said quietly, but not the part asking for help. A faint scraping echoed from the darkness, bare feet sliding across stone. Then another footstep, closer, soft, wet, patient. My skin crawled. Ray tightened his grip on my arm. We moved forward, now. We hurried into the next tunnel, a thinner passage where the walls closed in tightly around us, forcing our shoulders to brush against the slick, cold limestone as we passed. The air here felt different, warmer, heavy with humidity and the faint metallic sting of rusted iron. The darkness shifted behind us, shadows elongating unnaturally, stretching across the cavern floor like fingers reaching. Julian's voice followed. "Don't leave me!" Ray didn't look back. Phase 2 has started. Voices are its first strategy. "What's Phase 3? He didn't answer. The tunnel bent sharply, opened into another chamber, this one taller, almost cathedral-like despite the claustrophobic rock. The ceiling stretched upward into darkness, disappearing into some unseen cavern that might have been 30 feet high or 300. But the center of the room was what froze me. A spiral carved into the ground. Perfect, precise, geometric. Each groove cut deep into the stone, forming concentric rings that led toward a dark, circular pit at the center. The spiral glowed faintly, not with light, but with intention. Like it was aware of us. Ray's breath hitched. "No, no, no, no." "What's wrong?" "This is Phase 2 architecture." The floor trembled beneath our feet, the grooves in the spiral vibrating like chords plucked on a massive stone instrument. "What does that mean?" I whispered. Ray stepped backward. "It's restructuring the root." "Restructuring it for what?" "For integration," Ray said. "It's preparing the loop." I felt my stomach drop. "The loop," he pointed at the spiral. "This formation replicates tasks, steps, patterns. It builds a routine from whatever supervisor it's targeting." "From me?" Ray nodded. A low sound rose from the pit in the center, a deep, resonant inhale that felt like air being pulled through stone lungs. It kept inhaling and inhaling and inhaling, as if it were smelling me. Ray grabbed my wrist and pulled me away from the spiral. "We can't be in here. This room accelerates recognition." "The store recognizing me?" "No," Ray whispered. "You recognizing the store." My blood went cold. A long shape rose slowly from the pit. No rush, no urgency, as if it already knew we weren't leaving. I stared, horrified. Arms, hands, a torso. Its face was obscured in shadow, but its silhouette was unmistakably human. Too human. Ray cursed under his breath. "It's shaping itself." The figure stepped forward. The faint light caught its chest, where a cluster of badges hung like barnacles fused into its skin, shiny plastic rectangles from different decades. Names I didn't know. Names I recognized from the wall of badges Julian described. But one badge sat higher than the others. Cleaner. Newer. Not yet fused into the creature. Julian Hart, Night Supervisor. My mouth went dry. "Ray, it has his badge." "Don't look at its face," Ray said. "No matter what." The figure moved toward me, its gait unnervingly familiar. Too familiar. A pace I recognized from training shifts. The slight forward lean, the quiet landing of its steps, the way Julian walked. Evan, the creature whispered. My heart nearly stopped. That wasn't the mimic's glitched tone. It wasn't distorted. It wasn't manufactured. It was Julian's voice. Real, raw, painful. Ray stepped in front of me. Don't speak to it, please. Julian's voice croaked. Help me. My throat tightened, and for a terrible second, I took a step forward, because it wasn't the mimic. It was him, or something still wearing him. But Ray shoved me backward so hard my shoulder hit the rock wall. That's not Julian, Ray hissed. Then what am I hearing? His memory, Ray said. The tunnels preserve it. They use it to lure you into compliance. But the part of Julian that spoke those words, whoever he was, doesn't exist anymore. The figure took another step. The spiral grooves pulsed brighter as it approached, as if energized by its presence. Then it lifted its head. Ray swore violently and lunged at me, covering my eyes with his hand. Don't look at it. But I had already seen enough. The creature's face was split down the center, one half human, worn and exhausted, with a dull eye that still reflected hurt, and the other half empty, hollow, a smooth, featureless curve like wet clay waiting to be shaped, waiting to take on my face. My knees buckled. Ray grabbed me, hauling me back. Move! The creature stepped fully into the spiral. The ground pulsed. A low, harmonic vibration rippled outward, waves of sound that shook the chamber. The store was listening. The root was forming, and the creature's human half whispered, Evan, the only way out is to take my route. Ray yanked me into a side tunnel just as the creature lunged. The ground quaked. The spiral roared like a turbine. The walls vibrated violently enough that dust burst from the ceiling. We sprinted, stumbling through the narrow passage as the sound behind us built into a deafening rumble. The echo of Julian's voice, broken now, almost pleading, chased after us. Please take it from me, take it. Ray shoved me around a bend and slammed his back against the rock, chest heaving. You saw too much, he gasped. Phase 3 is starting. We're out of time. I swallowed hard. What does Phase 3 mean? Ray didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was barely more than breath. It means your route is almost finished. The tunnel pulsed around us like a living artery, each vibration moving through the stone in slow, deliberate waves that matched the cadence of my heartbeat too perfectly to be coincidence. My breath caught in my chest, each inhale feeling thinner than the last, as if the tunnels were rationing the air. Ray leaned against the wall, sweat streaking his forehead despite the cold. Phase 3, he murmured, is the imprint. The imprint, I rasped. Ray nodded. His flashlight flickered as he adjusted the angle. Shadows jumped across the rock. When the route is almost finished, the supervisors try to bind the worker's identity to the structure. Once the imprint sticks, you stop being a person. You become a pattern. I swallowed hard. A pattern. Your walk, your voice, your habits, your fears, your tasks. Everything you do becomes something the store can reproduce. And that's what Julian became. Ray exhaled shakily. That's what all the others became. A distant rumble rolled through the tunnels, so deep it vibrated the marrow inside my bones. Then a second rumble followed, a counter rhythm like something answering the first sound. 2 presences. I turned. There's more than one supervisor. Ray's expression tightened. There are always more than one. The one behind us is the one assigned to you. The one that took Julian? No, Ray said quietly. Julian's supervisor never left the lower levels. It has its own responsibilities now. Another vibration crawled across the floor, Lighter, softer, faster, my blood chilled. The collectors were moving again. Not toward us, around us, positioning. Ray tugged at my sleeve. We need to get to the lattice tunnels. That's where Julian hid his last message. You said his message was erased. The one he wrote on the stockroom wall, Ray corrected. But Julian was smarter than they wanted to believe. He hid something deeper, something they didn't find. The rumbling behind us grew louder, closer. I followed Ray down the narrowing passage, ducking under a low beam reinforced with rusted iron braces. The rock squeezed inward, forcing us to walk sideways, scraping our shoulders against the walls. We emerged into a narrow channel of interwoven supports, thin metal beams arranged in a crisscross pattern overhead. Water dripped steadily from the joints, forming thin rivulets across the packed clay floor. Ray knelt beside one of the supports and ran his fingers across the metal. This is it. What is this place? The lattice tunnels, he said. These beams were part of the earliest mining structures put in at least 70 years ago. The supervisors don't like this area. A faint whisper slid through the air. They can't reshape it. Why not? I asked. Ray pointed upward. Because the supports are anchored to the original mine architecture. It's older than the Walmart, older than the store's presence. They can influence it but not control it. So we're safe here? Ray's jaw clenched. Safer, not safe. He led me toward a thicker support beam, a central column surrounded by smaller braces. Carved into it, beneath decades of grime, was a faint, shallow indentation. Letters, a message. Ray wiped away the dirt with his sleeve, revealing words etched by a trembling hand. If you're reading this, they're already inside you. Find the exit before you believe them. J.H. My lungs tightened. Inside me. Ray studied the crude carving, his eyes narrowing. He doesn't mean physically. He means psychologically. The supervisors manipulate belief. They shape thought. They rewrite understanding. My pulse hammered. So I can't trust what I hear. You can't trust what you think, Ray said. The chamber behind us groaned, the sound rolling like an earthquake. A deep, resonant inhale followed. Closer now, filling the tunnel with pressurized air that made my ears pop. The supervisor was nearly here. Ray grabbed my arm again. We need to find the hatch. Julian mentioned it before he changed. He said there was an emergency shaft the miners used. I scanned the room. Where? He said the access point had 3 beams arranged like a triangle. I turned, shining my small emergency light across the chamber. Nothing, just rock, supports, crossbeams, until... Ray, I whispered, and there! To the left of the carved message, 3 beams met at converging angles, forming a triangular frame. At the center was a panel of rock that looked slightly smoother than the rest, like it had been moved before. Ray ran to it, pressing his fingers into the seams. It's sealed, he whispered. Help me. We both pressed our hands against the stone, pushing hard, muscles shaking. The tunnel trembled again. The sound behind us shifted, sharper now, like bone scraping across metal. Ray, I whispered, panting. It's close. I know. We have to move faster. I know. Fissures crawled up the walls. Dust cascaded over us like powdered ash. We pushed harder. The panel slid half an inch. A hand reached into the tunnel behind us. Not a human hand. A long, pale limb extended gently into the chamber, so soft and silent it made the world go still. The fingers brushed the beam beside my head. Ray froze. I didn't. Ray! I whispered hoarsely. Push! Together we shoved our weight against the stone. My shoulder screamed. My palms burned. The rock panel slid another inch, then another. A whisper rose behind us. Not my mother's voice, not Julian's voice, not Linda's voice, my own voice. Evan, Ray snapped. Don't listen. I gritted my teeth, shoved with everything I had left. The panel finally gave way, swinging inward into darkness. Ray grabbed my arm. Go! We dove through just as the pale hand brushed the edge of the opening. The panel slid shut behind us with a heavy crunch. Darkness swallowed everything. For the first time in hours, the tunnels were silent. Ray and I lay on the cold floor, chests heaving, fists clenched, ears straining. Nothing followed. Not a breath, not a footstep, not a whisper. After a long moment, Ray exhaled. We're in the miner's emergency shaft, he whispered. I don't think the supervisors can reach here. I swallowed hard. So, this is the exit? Ray didn't speak. When he finally answered, his voice trembled. It's an exit. Not the exit, not safety, just another path, another choice, a route no one had taken in decades. My heart dropped. What's at the end of it? I asked. Ray shook his head slowly. I don't know, Evan. He turned his flashlight forward, revealing a long stairway carved into stone. Rusty, crumbling, leading upward into a distant pinprick of black. But it's the only way left. The stairway stretched upward like a spine carved into the earth, rusted metal railings clinging to the rock like ribs, each step coated in a fine layer of coal dust that puffed gently under our boots. The air here felt different from the tunnels behind us, cooler, thinner, but also emptier. No whispers, no breathing walls, no shifting stone, just silence that felt too fragile to trust. Ray kept his flashlight angled downward as he climbed, checking each step for stability. This shaft wasn't meant for long-term use, he murmured. If a collapse happened, miners could climb out if they were fast enough. I swallowed hard. So it's unstable. Everything down here is unstable, he said. It's just the only thing the supervisors can't manipulate directly. The darkness around us pulsed, not with life, but with age. The shaft was old, untouched, unobserved, and somehow that felt more dangerous than anything supernatural I'd seen above, because now we didn't know the rules. The stairs creaked under our weight, sharp, brittle sounds that echoed up the shaft in a jagged rhythm. After 20 steps, the walls narrowed again, the stairway forcing us into single file. Ray climbed faster. I followed, gripping the cold railing. Do you think Julian made it this far? Ray didn't answer immediately. Finally, no. My chest tightened. Then how did he leave this message? Julian found this place. He just didn't make it out of it. I swallowed. He didn't die here? Ray shook his head. The supervisors don't let supervisors die, Evan. They recycle them. Recycle. The word made my skin crawl. We climbed for another minute before Ray stopped abruptly, holding up a hand. Wait. I halted. What is it? He slowly angled the flashlight upward, and for the first time since entering the shaft, we saw light. A faint, bluish glow like a dying bulb struggling against darkness illuminated the top of the staircase. It flickered with a steady pulse, not unlike a heartbeat, except the light wasn't electrical. It was moving, shifting, pacing. Ray sucked in a breath. Something's up there. Are you sure it's not just daylight? I whispered. Daylight doesn't move. The figure at the top of the shaft drifted left, then right, its shadow stretching unnaturally long, brushing against the curved walls like fingertips seeking purchase. I stepped closer. Collector? No, Ray said. Collectors don't come this high. Supervisor? He shook his head slowly. Supervisors don't need stairs. Then what? The shadow paused, then turned. The flickering bluish glow brightened, revealing the outline of a person, a silhouette, a man, standing perfectly still. Ray's grip tightened on my sleeve, his voice cracked with recognition. No, that's not possible. Who is it? I whispered. Ray's breath shook. It's Julian. My body went cold. It can't be. He raised his flashlight and shined it upward in a thin beam. The light struck the silhouette's face, and the world lurched sideways. It was Julian, his clothes torn, his badge fused to his chest like a wound, his eyes sunken and bruised, but unmistakably human. Not a mimic, not a supervisor shape, not an echo. Julian himself, alive, standing at the top of the shaft like he'd been waiting for us. Ray, I whispered, what is he doing here? Julian didn't speak. He didn't react to the light. He didn't blink. He simply stood at the rail, gripping it with white-knuckled hands hard enough to make them tremble. Then he turned his head toward me with a slow, brittle motion, as if his muscles remembered how to move but weren't entirely sure of the reason. Evan, he said. His voice was real, human, no distortion. Every hair on my body rose. Ray whispered, he shouldn't be able to talk. Julian took one step down. The staircase groaned loudly under his weight. He took another step, then the third. He wasn't approaching aggressively. He wasn't stumbling or dragging anything. He walked like a man exhausted, pulled forward by sheer will. Evan, he repeated, you need to turn around. My breath froze. Ray whispered, don't listen. But Julian kept descending. Evan, it's not an exit. Ray's flashlight flickered violently. I stepped back. He's warning us. No, Ray hissed. It's trying to sound like a warning, that's all. It's his real voice. That doesn't mean it's him. Julian was halfway down now, eyes wide, trembling, not with threat, but desperation. You can't go up, Julian said. You can't. They're waiting. My voice cracked. Who's waiting? Julian opened his mouth, but another voice cut in from above. A woman's voice, sharp, cold. You weren't supposed to get this far. Ray jerked backward. Linda. No, not Linda. Her shape shifted at the top of the shaft, a silhouette in a Walmart vest, but taller, thinner, and wrong. The edges of her form flickered like glitching pixels. Ray, I whispered, that isn't her. No, he said, it's the supervisor that uses her voice. Julian turned sharply toward it. Get back, he growled. He's not ready. But the supervisor moved down the steps with inhuman fluidity, its limbs bending at angles no person could mimic. The stairway didn't creak under its weight. It didn't even seem to touch the metal. Evan, it said calmly, your route is incomplete. Julian shoved himself between us, arms out, trembling violently. Run! Ray grabbed me. Move! We spun into the side passage, branching off the stairway. An old ventilation shaft, half collapsed and barely wider than our shoulders. Julian lunged forward, blocking the supervisor's reach. The last thing I heard before Ray dragged me into darkness was Julian's scream, raw, human, and abruptly cut short. The ventilation shaft was so narrow that Ray practically had to drag me through it, our shoulders scraping along jagged stone and rusted metal edges that tore at our shirts. Somewhere behind us, back on the stairway, something heavy hit the railings with a metallic shriek, followed by the sound of bending steel. Julian's scream echoed once, then stopped, cut off mid-breath. Ray shoved me deeper into the passage. His flashlight jittered wildly, casting fractured beams across the cramped walls. Don't stop, he hissed. If you stop, it finds us. My throat tightened. "Julian!" "He gave you time," Ray snapped. "Don't waste it." The shaft narrowed even more, forcing us to crawl. Dust filled my nose and lungs. Each inhale, a shallow, gritty burn. I blinked rapidly as sand-like sediment coated my eyelashes. Behind us, the metal stairwell groaned, loud, tortured, like something was climbing into the shaft we'd just entered. Ray looked back only once and went pale. "It's coming," he whispered. "What is it now?" "Not the supervisor. Something built from you." My heart slammed so hard I felt it in my teeth. "Built from me?" Ray crawled faster. "Phase 3 is imprinting. If it can't lure you, it copies you." "Copies me how?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to, because I heard it. A soft whisper. My voice, not distorted, not warped, not mimicked. Perfect. "Evan!" I froze mid-crawl, hand slipping on damp stone. Ray whipped back toward me. "Don't listen. Keep going." But the voice came again, closer this time. Too close. "Evan, you're almost home." My limbs shook uncontrollably. "Move!" Ray shoved my back with enough force to knock the breath out of me. We scrambled forward until the shaft suddenly widened, dropping us into a low chamber supported by beams so rotted they bowed inward like ribs caving under pressure. Old mining tools lay scattered across the floor, a cracked lantern, broken shovels, and a length of track snaking into a collapsed tunnel. Ray aimed his flashlight at a rotting wooden door set into the far wall, a door so warped it looked like it had been underwater. "That's the emergency exit," Ray said. "If it's not collapsed, it should lead to an old service tunnel. From there, we can—" He stopped, because the door, the old, sunken, warped door, was glowing around the edges. A faint, impossible blue light leaked from the cracks, pulsing like a heartbeat. Ray sucked in a breath. "No, no, no, no." "What does that mean?" I whispered. "It means the supervisor already reached the other side." The ground beneath us trembled. Dust cascaded from the beams overhead. A distant voice, mine but not mine, drifted through the ventilation shaft behind us. "Evan, you belong with us." Ray grabbed a broken shovel off the ground and wedged it tightly under the door handle. "It's not an exit anymore, it's an entrance." "To what?" "To your route." Something slammed into the other side of the glowing door, so hard the handle bent inward. Ray stepped back. "We need a different way." "There is no other way." Another slam. The shovel creaked. The glowing edges brightened. The voice behind us drifted closer. "Evan, come back." I turned toward Ray, panic constricting my chest. "We're trapped." "No," he said, scanning the chamber with frantic eyes. "There has to be—" His light caught something. A narrow crack in the wall behind a rotten support beam, barely a person wide, buried under decades of collapsed timber and rock. Ray sprinted toward it. "Help me clear this." We clawed at the debris, pulling away splintered wood and loose stone. Every handful of rubble we removed widened the gap by inches, each second feeling like a stolen moment. Behind us, the glowing door shook violently. A long, stretching groan echoed as the wood warped inward. I redoubled my efforts. My fingers bled from jagged edges, my nails cracked. My breath ripped from my chest in sharp bursts. Ray shoved the last beam aside. "Go!" I squeezed into the opening, stone scraping my ribs. Ray followed, and the moment he ducked through, the glowing door behind us exploded inward. Blue light filled the chamber, along with the sound of footsteps. 2 sets, one heavy. One light, one my own. "Evan!" Ray pulled me deeper into the crack, down a steep incline that scraped our knees and palms raw. The stone was slick, cold, alive. We tumbled through darkness until the incline spat us out onto a sloping dirt floor. I landed hard, pain bursting across my shoulder. Ray hit the ground beside me, groaning. I looked up and froze. We were in a wide tunnel lined with rusted rails. An old mine cart sat collapsed on its side. Water dripped from stalactites. The ceiling arched so high our flashlight didn't reach the top. Ray pushed himself up. This is the oldest level. The supervisor can't control all of it. Can it reach us? Yes, always, but here it's slower. I swallowed hard. Where does this tunnel lead? Ray wiped blood from his palm. Back toward the surface. If the collapse hasn't sealed it. A distant clanging echoed behind us, metal hitting stone rhythmically. Footsteps. My footsteps. The mimic was in the tunnel. Ray grabbed my wrist. Run. We sprinted down the rusted trackway, our footsteps pounding against the uneven ground. The tunnel stretched onward, cold air rushing past us like icy breath. Behind us, the mimic's footsteps matched our pace. Perfectly, we rounded a bend, and a faint shaft of light pierced the darkness ahead. Not blue, not pulsing, not impossible. Daylight. Real daylight. Ray shouted, "There!" The ceiling above the tunnel had partially collapsed, leaving a jagged opening to the outside world, just wide enough to squeeze through. Fresh air poured down, cold and sharp and smelling like pine trees and open sky. We scrambled toward it, and something grabbed my ankle. Not a hand, not a claw, not flesh. A perfect replica of my own fingers, cold, tight, unyielding. I screamed, twisting as the mimic lunged from the shadows, its face a blank, unfinished version of mine, its movements too fluid, too familiar. Ray kicked its arm, breaking its grip. "Climb, now!" I pulled myself up the rubble, dirt and roots tearing at my hands. Ray shoved me from below, boosting me towards the shaft of daylight. The mimic lunged again, nearly grabbing Ray this time, but he twisted aside and scrambled after me. My fingers caught the edge of the opening. I hauled myself up, lungs burning, hands shaking, and rolled onto the forest floor outside. Trees, fresh air, night sky, freedom. Ray pulled himself out behind me and collapsed beside me, chest heaving. For several seconds we said nothing. We were alive. We shouldn't have been. Finally, Ray whispered, "We made it." But even as he said it, I knew it wasn't true. Because the opening behind us, the jagged hole leading back into the mines, was still glowing faintly, still breathing. And from somewhere deep in the darkness below, my voice called up once more. "Evan, your shift isn't over." Ray grabbed my wrist, hard. "Don't answer it." I didn't, but the voice didn't fade. It waited, patient, knowing, and in that moment, staring into the dark mouth of the tunnel, I realized the truth. You don't escape a route, you only delay it, and some doors, once they open, never fully close again.